Hello once again, everyone, and welcome back to our series on Wallerstein. So today I'm joined by a new guest, Randy, as you've seen him on the channel before, and we're going to be going over the follow-up technique from the Außer in, which is what we covered yesterday. Now, this particular following play is not a sword takeaway, it's a sword lockup, and it can be interpreted either as being something you supplement the Außer in with, or it could also be interpreted as an alternative. The wording is kind of vague in that regard, and I've seen it interpreted both ways. I'm going to go over both of them. But what essentially is going to happen is that, same situation we got into before. We end up threatening him high. I cut low. He falls with the short edge over. And his arms are extended, right? What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to drive out with my left hand, and depending upon what I want to grab, I have two options as per the two pictures. Option one is I'm going to drive over and grab the whole sword, so around the crossguard area. Option two is I'm going to drive through between his hands. We'll start with out here. I'm going to grab, and at the same time I'm going to come down and push the back of my hand up. This locks his sword against my side. His flat is currently on my flank, as well as lifting both of his arms. So even though it's one arm on two, mechanically things are working in my favor, right? Now my sword remains kind of hanging out here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to push down with the pommel to lay it onto his neck, which now I've got a sort of double lockup going on. I can exert pressure with my hand to pin it down to my side. He can try and pull his sword back, but I've got that crossguard locked onto my forearm, so he can't really get away. And also I've got my shield locked against his arm at the same time, as well as the far side of his neck. So if need be, I can exert pressure on two different points of contact, which prevent him from getting away. So now we'll show that from the other side. So, we're in here, all that high stuff happens, I cut. I'm now going to, again, take my hand off, through, up, thrust between, and as you see, he's locked up to my side, and this is those points of pressure I was talking about. Now, the trick with this is when you go to do your thrust, it's really more about the pommel than it is about the blade. If you try to aim the blade, your mind's going to be in the wrong place. It's going to be very difficult to aim. Instead, if I just push that pommel underneath and keep it very tight to his arm, not too difficult for me to do. If I want to, I can even exert more pressure by pinning this to my chest, and I can definitely throw him from here. I wouldn't recommend it, but you definitely can. Right? So that's your first option. Go through, grab around the guard, and that's the one I recommend if you're wearing heavies. I'll show the difference in a moment. But this next one, rather than going around the guard, we're going to go between the hands. So, in here, threaten, cut, he falls over, right? Now I'm going to go here. Now this is exerting the exact same pressure as it did before, except rather than getting the back of my arm onto his lead wrist, I'm going to be pushing down onto his lead wrist, which will buckle his grip this way, while still exerting the same pressure I did as before. So this one can actually get a little bit more, because now my arms can go further, but otherwise remains unchanged. This one is really, really great if you're not particularly strong or confident, because once you get between someone's hands, it's really not too difficult to get them to lose their grip on the sword. And worst comes to worst, he lets go with one of his hands, you've still got it pinned to your flank, so you're not terribly worried. As for the sword itself, that's the follow-up, right? The important thing is get that grip. From there, you could strike him, whatever, but the fastest way to get him to stop fighting you is to get that sword across and between us. This is also a very common thing that you see in Messerfechten. The idea being that I am demonstrating dominance without necessarily killing him. I mean, at that range, I could totally thrust into his body or what have you, but this lockup is a good way of me showing I have bested him, telling him he needs to stop, and both of us can go home at the end of the day, which Wallerstein does have some of those techniques here and there where it seems to be more of a lockup as opposed to a killing or throwing or incapacitating move. But let's talk about it off of the Außer in, because that's the other bit, right? So I go into here, he falls down. Now, when I go through for the Außer in, I've got those 2 points of power here that we talked about before. Now I can exert pressure by just raising, stepping backward, and all that great stuff, but especially if I'm worried about him trying to hit me back, even though he's got a sword across his neck, people make interesting decisions in this day and age. Following up with a wrap like this is not a bad idea. I'm already this deep, my sword's already in place, I might as well just grab and keep. This doesn't change my body position at all. All I do is get a bit more grip. Now I can't leave anymore. I'm stuck in here, but so is he, and he's in the worst position. Now, from this position, I don't recommend going for the around the guard because you'll trap your own sword in the same motion. If you are going to do it, you're going to have to push your sword forward at the same time, which as you see, especially because both of us have shilts, it gets messy real quick. So if you end up in this position, you've nailed the Ausum in, and you're worried, just go ahead and get this in. Especially at this distance, not hard to shove a heavy through there. But now I'll throw on my heavies real quick, and I'll just show how things can get stuck a little bit, and then that'll be our technique for the day. So, in, threaten, cut, I'm going to take my hand off, around, no problem. In fact, I even find that with the heavies I can get a little bit more force because they've made my hands bigger. You notice I ended up wrapping a little bit closer to his lead hand. Still A-okay. I almost kind of don't care a little bit extra because I've got that hand protection, which is a nice thing. But just for sake of, now I'll go between the hands. In, threaten, cut. Okay, I'm going to push between. As you can see, it's not as easy for me to do. I had to kind of punch it between, but that will come up a lot when it comes to getting that opportunity. You can do it, however. Let's show those on the other side. So, in, threaten, cut. No problem. This time I got stuck because I worried too much about the tip, not enough about the guard. But because I stepped up nice and close, he can't get his sword away from me. And yeah, I could try and lay this out to finish it off, but at this point, I might as well just go ahead and, pull this back through. I can't actually cut him on the side of the head, or if we were, talking realsies, nice pommel to the daddy bags would be fantastic. But now I'll go between the hands. Right there. Now, the important thing here is that I'm locking his sword to my flank. I don't actually care what it hits, right? If it ends up more on my thigh, that's good, because then I can exert hip pressure against it. But in this case, since it ended up just in front of me, I'm still not terribly concerned. It's not going to do anything down there. He can't use the tip in any way to really exert any pressure, and if he does, I can feel it. So I'm still totally safe. But otherwise, that's kind of our first not official sword taking, but kind of sword taking. So I'm going to call it lockups, and I will talk more about some other more lockups as opposed to sword takeaways as we continue on. But otherwise, thank you very much, Randy. And we will go over the remaining Wallerstein techniques another time.